The night was silent. Only the sound of dry wind moved across the empty fields. The moonlight fell weakly on broken fences and tall grass. The human farmer, named Daniel, had just finished a long day of work. He locked his tools and sat in his small wooden house, unaware that someone was watching from the shadows. She was an alien girl, thin as a shadow, her skin faintly glowing with strange markings, her stomach twisted with hunger. She had not eaten in 2 days. Her steps were weak, but her eyes sharp. She saw the barn where the farmer kept his bread, and her heart beat faster. Hunger was stronger than fear. She whispered to herself, "Just one piece. Only one piece to live another day." Slowly she pushed the barn door. It creaked, and she froze. Her heart pounded. She waited. No sound came. Inside, the smell of bread hit her like fire. Her mouth watered. Her hands shook as she reached for a small loaf wrapped in cloth. She clutched it as if it was treasure. But before she could run, a deep voice echoed, "Stop right there." The girl froze. Her eyes widened. In the doorway stood Daniel, tall and broad, holding a lantern. His face was hard. His hand rested near the heavy tool hanging by the wall. For a moment, time stopped. The girl's legs wanted to run, but her hunger chained her feet. Daniel stepped closer. The light fell on her face. He saw the glowing marks on her skin, the trembling hands, the bread pressed tightly against her chest. She looked less like a thief and more like a starving child. "Put it back," he said firmly. The girl's lips quivered. She shook her head. "Please. I can't." Her voice was rough, almost broken. She dropped to her knees, holding the bread like it was life itself. "I will die if I give it back." Daniel frowned. He had seen many thieves before. Most ran, some fought. But this one begged. Her eyes were wide, not with greed, but with desperation. "I should call the patrol," he muttered. His village did not like outsiders, especially aliens. "A thief could mean trouble, no," she cried. Her voice cracked. She crawled forward on her knees. "Don't give me to them, please." She lowered her head to the dirt, shame burning her face. Then, in a trembling voice, she said words that stunned him. "I will work for you," she whispered. "I will work your fields by day and warm you by night. Only let me stay, only let me eat." The lantern shook slightly in Daniel's hand. He stared at her, trying to understand if she was serious. This girl, dirty and weak, was offering herself as payment for bread. The night air grew heavier, the silence pressed against him. For a long moment, neither moved. The girl stayed on the ground, her forehead touching the cold earth. She expected anger, maybe even a strike. Instead, she heard him sigh. Daniel stepped closer. His boots stopped just inches from her. "Look at me," he ordered. Slowly, she raised her head. Her eyes glistened with tears. Her face was pale, her lips dry. Yet there was a strange fire inside her gaze, the fire of someone who refused to die quietly. "Why here?" he asked. "Why risk my farm?" "There are many places." She swallowed hard. "Because you are alone," she whispered. "Others would kill me, I thought. Maybe you would only shout." Daniel stared at her for a long time. His heart battled his mind. She was a thief, but also just a hungry creature. His farm was small and he had little. But in her voice, he heard more than hunger. He heard a desperate will to live. The bread was still in her hands. He could see her fingers digging into it like claws. Finally, he spoke. "Eat." Her eyes widened. "What? Eat," he repeated. His tone was still hard, but his eyes softened slightly. She tore the bread with shaking hands, stuffing pieces into her mouth. Her eyes closed as if tasting heaven itself. Crumbs fell to the dirt. She did not care. She ate like someone who feared the bread would vanish if she stopped. Daniel watched silently. His lantern flickered against the barn walls, casting their shadows together. A strange feeling touched him. Pity, anger, and something else he could not name. When she finished, the girl looked down in shame. "I will keep my word," she said softly. "Fields by day, warmth by night. I will not run. Her voice was steady now, almost fearless. Daniel turned away. We will see, he muttered, and walked back to the house. But his steps were heavy. For the first time in years, the farmer's quiet life had been broken. Behind him, in the barn, the alien girl clutched the last piece of bread and whispered to herself, I will not die, not tonight. The night grew colder, but inside the farmer's house a new story was already taking root, a story of hunger, survival, and a promise made in the dark. The morning sun rose slowly over the horizon, painting the fields in gold. Daniel stepped out of his house with his old hat and shovel. He did not expect to see the alien girl still there, but she was, standing near the barn door, her eyes red from no sleep. She lowered her head when he looked at her, but her voice was firm. I said I would work. Show me. Daniel studied her in silence. He had thought she would run away during the night. Most thieves would. But she had stayed, thin, weak, and shaking, still ready to keep her word. Fine, he said, and led her toward the field. The soil was dry. It needed turning before seeds could grow. He handed her a worn-out hoe. The wooden handle was cracked. Start here. The girl held the tool awkwardly. Her hands were small, her arms thin. When she struck the ground, the hoe bounced back. She staggered, breathing hard. Daniel almost told her to stop, but she grit her teeth and tried again. Dust rose with every strike. Her glowing marks shimmered faintly in the morning light. Daniel worked beside her, his movements strong and practiced. He glanced at her again and again. She struggled, sweat dripping down her face, yet she did not quit. By noon, her body shook with exhaustion, her hands blistered and raw. Still, when Daniel paused, she forced herself to keep going. Her breath came in sharp gasps. Every strike of the hoe was weaker than the last. Finally, Daniel spoke. Enough, the girl froze, panting. Did I fail? No, he muttered. You'll break before the soil does. He pulled the tool from her hands. Her fingers clung to it as if afraid he would send her away. But then she let go. He tossed her a small flask of water. She caught it with trembling hands and drank quickly, water spilling down her chin. For the first time, Daniel noticed how young she looked, younger than he had thought the night before. They sat under a tree. The sun was harsh, but the shade gave a little relief. Daniel ate a piece of bread quietly. The girl stared at it, but said nothing. He broke it in half and handed her a piece. She hesitated. You already gave me bread last night. And now it's today, he said simply. Her lips curved into something close to a smile, the first he had seen on her face. She ate slowly this time, savoring every bite. When she finished, silence stretched between them. Finally, she spoke. Why are you letting me stay? You could have turned me in. Daniel looked at the fields. Maybe because you didn't run. The girl lowered her eyes. She wanted to say thank you, but the words stuck in her throat. The rest of the day was no easier. Daniel showed her how to carry water. She tripped twice, spilling half of it. The villagers passing by laughed and pointed. Look at that, one man sneered. Daniel's taken a pet thief. The girl stiffened, her glowing marks dimming with shame. She wanted to shout back, but Daniel's voice cut through. Ignore them, work. She obeyed, though her chest burned with anger. Each step felt heavier, but she forced herself to keep moving. Her pride hurt more than her blisters. When evening came, the field looked different. The soil was turned, the water buckets lined in a row. Daniel inspected her work quietly, then gave a single nod. Good enough. Her heart leaped at those two words. It was not praise, but it was not rejection either. They returned to the house. The girl limped slightly, her feet sore, her stomach growled again. Daniel placed a bowl of stew in front of her. She blinked in surprise. For me? Eat, you earned it, he said. The girl stared at the steaming bowl, then at him. Her throat tightened. She had offered herself in desperation last night, but now he was treating her not as a prisoner, but as someone who had value. After dinner, Daniel leaned back. You said you'd warm me by night, His voice was calm, but his eyes sharp. The girl tensed, her heart pounding, but Daniel continued. I don't want your body, I want your effort. You've proven you can work. That's enough for now. Her breath caught. She looked at him, wide-eyed. Relief spread across her face, but also confusion. No human had ever refused such an offer. Why? She whispered. Daniel did not answer. He only said, tomorrow, the work continues. Later that night, when Daniel slept, the girl sat near the small fire. She touched her blistered hands and whispered to herself, I will not fail, not again. Her glowing marks flickered faintly as if responding to her resolve. Outside, the wind carried the whispers of the villagers, but inside the house, the bond between a human and a hungry alien thief had begun to take root. The night was quiet, but not peaceful. A faint wind rattled the old shutters of Daniel's small wooden house. The lantern burned low on the table, casting a dim glow across the room. Daniel sat in his chair, sharpening a tool, while the alien girl sat near the fire. Hugging her knees, her hands were wrapped in cloth where blisters had torn open during the day. The marks on her skin glowed faintly in the firelight, shadows dancing over them. She kept her eyes on the flames, but her ears stayed alert. Every creak of the wood made her flinch, as if someone might come through the door to drag her away. Daniel noticed he did not speak for a long time. His eyes studied her carefully. She was strange, not just for her alien skin, but for the way she carried herself, thin and fragile, yet still holding a spark inside. Finally, he broke the silence. You'll tear your hands apart if you keep working like that. The girl looked up quickly, startled. For a moment, she did not know how to answer. Then she whispered, If I stop, you'll send me away. Daniel frowned. Did I say that? Her lips parted, but no sound came. She lowered her head again. Her glowing marks dimmed slightly, like fading light. The silence stretched again. Daniel returned to his tool, but he could feel her fear pressing against the air. It was not the fear of him, but of something larger, something that had followed her long before she ever stepped onto his farm. At last, she spoke again, her voice trembling. Back home, I worked too, harder than this. But they didn't give food. They gave chains. Daniel's hand froze over the blade. His eyes narrowed. He lifted his gaze. Chains? She nodded slowly, hugging herself tighter. They said my kind owed them, that we were weak, that we were only worth the labor of our bodies, and if we refused, they took the little ones, sold them, made us watch. Her voice cracked, and she bit her lip hard to silence the sound, but a tear slipped down her cheek anyway. Daniel put the tool down. The firelight flickered across his rough face. He had known cruelty in the world, but hearing it from her lips was different. It felt raw, close, too real. He asked quietly, Is that why you came here? She nodded. I ran. I kept running, but hunger always caught me. Last night it almost killed me. That's why I offered what I did. I didn't care about shame, I only wanted to live. Her words echoed through the small room. Daniel leaned back, his chest heavy. He thought of the villagers, the way they laughed at her, the way they would happily throw her back to the chains if they knew. For a while only the fire crackled. Then Daniel spoke again. You don't owe me your body. His tone was firm. If you want to stay, then work. That's enough. The girl's eyes widened, her breath caught. You mean it? He nodded once. Her hands trembled as she wiped her face. She tried to speak, but the words failed her. Instead, she whispered something so soft he almost didn't hear it. Thank you. Daniel didn't reply, but he threw another log into the fire. The flames rose higher, warming the room. Later, when Daniel went to his bed, the girl stayed by the fire. Her eyes followed the sparks floating up the chimney. In the silence, she whispered to herself in her own tongue, strange and melodic words, almost like a prayer. Daniel, half asleep, heard the sound. He turned his head on the pillow. What are you saying? She stiffened, then looked over, embarrassed. Old words, she admitted. for strength, for hope. My mother used to say them when she thought I was sleeping. Daniel's eyes closed again, but he muttered, "Keep saying them, maybe they'll work here too." The girl smiled faintly in the dark, a small smile, but the first real one in years. Outside, the wind howled across the empty fields, but inside the house, two lonely lives had begun to share their silence. As the fire burned lower, she whispered again, not to herself this time, but to the night, "I will not run, not anymore." And for the first time, she believed it. Dark clouds gathered above the horizon. Rolling like heavy smoke across the evening sky, Daniel stood in the field, his hands gripping the shovel. The wind carried the smell of rain, sharp and cold. He knew a storm was coming, but he didn't know it would bring more than thunder. The alien girl worked beside him, tying down the last rows of seedlings they had planted. Her glowing marks flickered faintly as the wind whipped her hair across her face. She looked up at the sky nervously. "It will break everything, won't it?" Daniel nodded. "If we're not careful, yes." They hurried to cover the tools, to pull sacks of grain into the barn. The air grew thicker, heavy with the promise of rain. Thunder cracked like the sky itself was tearing. By the time the first drops fell, they were both soaked. Daniel shoved the barn door closed, the girl panting beside him. Her hands shook, but her eyes were fierce. She would not abandon the work, not now. "Inside," Daniel ordered. But as they stepped back toward the house, he froze. Shapes moved at the edge of the field, dark figures slipping between the trees. At first he thought it was the storm playing tricks on his eyes, but then a lantern flared, and he saw them clearly. 3 men from the village, rough and hungry looking. Their eyes glinted with greed. "Stay behind me," Daniel muttered. His jaw tightened. He recognized them, troublemakers who had always wanted what wasn't theirs. The men strode forward, their boots splashing in the mud. The leader called out, "Storm's bad, farmer. Better let us share your supplies before nature takes it all." His voice was mocking, but there was steel behind it. Daniel narrowed his eyes. "You're not here for shelter. You're here for what's in my barn." The man laughed. "Barn? Food, maybe more. We saw your little stray working the fields, pretty thing for an alien. How much will she fetch in chains?" The girl froze. Her breath caught. For a heartbeat, her legs wanted to run, but then her fear turned to anger. Her glowing marks flared brighter like fire beneath her skin. Daniel stepped forward, blocking their path. "You'll take nothing," the leader sneered. "1 man against 3? You'll break before we do." The storm crashed overhead, rain pouring in sheets. The men lunged, mud splashing under their boots. Daniel swung his shovel, striking the first one across the chest. The man stumbled back, cursing. The other 2 rushed in, fists swinging. Daniel fought hard, but he was outnumbered. A blow landed on his jaw, another shoved him into the mud. The shovel slipped from his grip. The leader raised a knife, shouting, "We'll gut you first, then take the rest." Before the blade could fall, a sharp cry split the storm. The alien girl leaped forward, grabbing a broken branch from the ground. She swung it with surprising strength, cracking it across the man's arm. The knife fell into the mud. The leader howled, clutching his wrist. She did not stop. Her eyes burned with fury. She struck again and again, driving the men back. Her glowing marks lit the storm like flashes of lightning. For the first time, Daniel saw the strength hidden in her thin frame. The thieves cursed and retreated, spitting threats. "This isn't over. You'll regret keeping her." Then they vanished into the rain, swallowed by the storm. Daniel stood slowly, wiping blood from his lip. He looked at the girl, still clutching the broken branch. Her chest heaved, her eyes wild. Rain streamed down her face, but her glowing marks burned bright. "You fought," he said quietly. She dropped the branch, her hands trembling. "I couldn't let them take everything, not again." Her voice cracked. "Not you, too." Daniel stared at her, something shifting inside him. She had not just defended herself. She had defended him, his farm, his home. The storm raged around them, but inside the barn a strange warmth grew, stronger than fear, stronger than hunger. They pulled the supplies tight, securing what they could. By the time they stumbled back into the house, both were shaking with exhaustion. Daniel lit the fire, its glow pushing away the storm's shadow. The girl sat near the flames, still breathing hard. Her hands were raw, her clothes soaked, but her eyes stayed fixed on him, as if waiting for judgment. Finally, Daniel spoke. "You could have run, but you didn't." She whispered. "I told you I won't run anymore." The storm howled outside, but in that moment, Daniel felt something he had not felt in years. Trust. Fragile but real. And for the first time, he thought maybe this thief was more than a burden. Maybe she was someone worth standing beside. The storm passed by morning. The fields were soaked, the air heavy with the smell of wet soil. Daniel stepped outside with tired eyes. His jaw ached where the thief's fist had struck him, but his farm was still standing. The barn held strong. The seeds remained and the supplies were safe. Inside the house, the alien girl was cleaning the mud from the floor. She moved slowly, her body sore from the night before. Her glowing marks were faint now, like embers after a fire. Still, her hands did not stop. She wanted to prove she belonged. Daniel watched her quietly. Something in him had changed. Last night she had not been just a thief. She had fought like someone with something to protect. And she had protected him. When she noticed his gaze, she lowered her eyes. I didn't mean to bring trouble," she whispered. "Those men wanted your farm because of me." Daniel shook his head. "Those men wanted it because they are cowards, not because of you." He set down a small plate of bread and dried meat. "Eat." She hesitated, then sat down. Her hands were careful, almost reverent, as if the food was too precious to touch. After a long silence, Daniel asked, "What do they call you?" The girl froze. Her eyes flickered with fear. She gripped the bread tighter. "I don't have a name anymore." Daniel frowned. "Everyone has a name." "Not slaves," she whispered. Her voice cracked. "They stripped it from me. They called me nothing. A number, a mark. For so long I stopped saying it even to myself." Her glowing marks dimmed further. Her shoulders hunched. Daniel saw the weight of her shame pressing her down. He leaned forward, his voice steady. "Tell me just once, tell me your real name." Her lips trembled. At first she shook her head, but then, as if fighting herself, she whispered, "Lyra." The sound was soft, fragile, like a secret she had buried for years. She looked away quickly, afraid of his reaction, afraid the name would be mocked or stolen. Daniel's chest tightened. He repeated it slowly. "Lyra." The name rolled over his tongue, solid and real. He gave a short nod. "That's better than calling you thief." Her eyes widened, her breath caught. For the first time she heard her name spoken with respect, not cruelty. Tears burned her eyes. She pressed a hand to her chest as if to hold the sound inside her. "Say it again," she whispered, almost pleading. Daniel hesitated, then said it once more, firmer this time. "Lyra." The girl closed her eyes. A small smile touched her lips, a smile that was soft and trembling but real. She whispered, "Thank you." The rest of the day, she worked in the fields with renewed strength. Every time Daniel called out to her, even if just a hand, him a tool, she lifted her head proudly. No longer a nameless shadow, but Lyra, a person again. Villagers passed by, whispering and pointing as usual. Some muttered cruel words, calling her thief, calling Daniel a fool, but she held her chin higher than before. Their words stung less because now she had something stronger than shame. Her name. That evening, Daniel gave her a small piece of cloth and a needle. "Mend that shirt," he said, pointing to the tear in his sleeve. She took it carefully, sitting near the fire. Her hands moved slowly at first, clumsy from lack of practice, but soon steadier. Daniel watched as she hummed under her breath. It was a low, strange tune, foreign yet soothing. Daniel asked, "What's that song?" Lyra paused. "A song my mother used to sing. She said names carry strength when spoken in song." Her eyes softened. "She used to sing mine." Daniel leaned back, listening quietly. The fire cracked. The wind outside was calm. For the first time since she arrived, the house felt less empty. When the shirt was mended, Lyra placed it neatly beside him. She hesitated, then spoke. "Why did you not turn me away? Truly, why?" Daniel studied her face. Her eyes searched his, desperate. "For truth, finally," he said. "Because I've lived alone too long, and maybe I wanted to hear a name in this house again." Lyra's heart ached. She understood loneliness well. She whispered, "Then I will stay, as long as you let me." Daniel gave a small nod, not smiling, but not frowning either. That was enough. Later, when she lay on her blanket near the fire, Lyra traced her name in the dust with her finger over and over, letters shaped in trembling lines. Her glowing marks brightened softly, as if answering to the sound of it in her mind. "Lyra," she whispered one last time before sleep, and for the first time in years she dreamed not of chains but of hope. The sun was high when Daniel and Lyra carried water from the well. The fields shimmered with heat, their boots sinking into the soft earth. Daniel wiped the sweat from his brow. Lyra staggered under the weight of the bucket, but she did not complain. Her glowing marks shone faintly in the sunlight. Her name still echoed in her mind like a shield, but whispers followed them everywhere. The villagers watched, their eyes sharp and unkind. At the well, women muttered, "That's her, the thief." One man spat on the ground as they passed. "She doesn't belong here." Daniel ignored them, but Lyra felt every word cut into her skin. She lowered her eyes, clutching the bucket tighter. That afternoon, as they loaded sacks of grain into the barn, a loud voice called out, "Farmer!" Daniel turned. 3 villagers stood at the edge of the field, more gathering behind them. Their faces were angry, their arms crossed. Daniel set down the sack. "What do you want?" The oldest man stepped forward, his voice harsh. "We want that thing gone." He pointed at Lyra. "She's a thief, a danger. She will bring patrols, or worse, slavers." Murmurs rose from the crowd, some nodding, some shouting, "Send her away. She's cursed. She'll ruin us all." Lyra froze, her heart pounded. She stepped back, clutching her arms, her glowing marks dimmed. Her voice shook as she whispered, "I should leave before they—" "No." Daniel cut her off. His voice was firm, his eyes stayed locked on the crowd. The old man sneered. "She stole from you, didn't she? Now she eats your food, sleeps under your roof. What is she to you?" Daniel's jaw tightened. He looked at Lyra, trembling behind him. Then he turned back to the villagers. "She is mine to protect." Gasps spread through the crowd. Some laughed bitterly. "Protect? A thief? Have you lost your mind, farmer?" Daniel stepped forward, his voice louder now. "She works my fields. She saves my crops. She fought off men who came to steal from me during the storm. What did any of you do that night? You hid in your homes while she stood beside me." The villagers shifted uneasily, but the old man barked, "That proves nothing. Her kind is dangerous. They bring chains. Everyone knows it." Daniel's voice cut sharp. "She brings no chains. She broke hers." Behind him, Lyra's breath caught. Tears filled her eyes. He had spoken for her, louder than she ever could. The old man's face darkened. "If you keep her, we will cut you off. No trade, no help. You'll stand alone with your stray." Daniel did not flinch. His voice was steady. "Then so be it." A heavy silence fell. The villagers stared at him. Some shook their heads, muttering. Others turned away in anger. One by one they left, their footsteps heavy with disapproval. Only the old man lingered a moment longer. His eyes narrowed with warning. Then he spat in the dirt and left too. The field grew quiet again. Only the sound of the wind through the grass remained. Lyra stood frozen, her chest tight. She whispered, Why did you do that? You could have sent me away, saved yourself." Daniel turned to her. His eyes were calm, though his shoulders were tense. "Because you're not nothing. You're Lyra. And this is your home now too." Her lips trembled. She pressed a hand to her mouth. Her tears spilled freely, not from shame this time, but from something deeper. For years, no one had spoken her name with such strength. No one had stood between her and the world. She whispered, "I don't know how to thank you." Daniel shook his head. "Don't thank me. Prove me right. Work, harder than ever. Show them you belong here." Her glowing marks brightened again, soft but steady. She nodded. "I will." That night, the house felt different. The villagers' rejection weighed heavy, but between Daniel and Lyra, a fire of resolve burned stronger. She mended torn sacks, he sharpened his tools. Their silence was no longer empty. It was filled with unspoken promises. Later, as the fire crackled low, Lyra whispered into the quiet, "They can hate me, but as long as you speak my name, I am not afraid." Daniel heard her but said nothing. Still, in the dim light, his eyes softened. He had not realized until now how much his own loneliness had changed since she came. Outside, the village turned against them, but inside the farm they had chosen each other, and that choice would be tested soon. The days after the villagers' judgment were heavy. Daniel and Lyra worked the fields alone. Their backs ached, their hands blistered, but they kept going. The whispers from the village grew colder. Doors closed when Daniel passed. Prices rose when he tried to trade. Some refused to sell to him at all. Still, Daniel did not bend. He plowed, sowed, and watered, and beside him, Lyra worked without pause. Every day she carried more than her small frame should. Every night, she sat by the fire, sewing, mending, cooking what little they had. One evening, after another long day, Daniel sat at the table sharpening his blade. Lyra placed a bowl of stew in front of him. She hesitated, then asked softly, "Do you regret it? Standing with me?" Daniel looked at her. His eyes were tired but steady. "No." Her lips parted in surprise. She lowered her gaze, whispering, "Even if it costs you everything?" Daniel's voice was firm. "Some things are worth more than everything." The words sank into her heart like fire. She held them close. She had spent her life as nothing. A shadow, a slave. Now someone had said she was worth more than everything. That night she sat near the fire, humming her mother's song. Daniel listened in silence, but something stirred in his chest. The loneliness he had carried for years felt lighter. He realized she had not only filled his fields with work, but his home with life. The next week, trouble returned. The same 3 thieves from the storm crept back to the farm, thinking Daniel was weaker now. They waited until night, shadows slipping through the fields, but this time they did not find an unguarded barn. Lyra stood waiting with a lantern. Her glowing marks burned bright, casting light through the dark. Daniel stepped out behind her, shovel in hand. The leader sneered, "Still keeping your little pet? You'll starve together soon. Might as well give us what we came for." Daniel's voice cut sharp. "You'll leave with nothing." The men laughed and rushed forward, but they met more than one farmer this time. Daniel fought with all his strength, his shovel striking hard, and beside him Lyra moved with a fury born of chains broken and dignity reclaimed. She struck, blocked, and shoved, her glowing marks blazing like fire across the night. The thieves cursed, beaten back. At last, they fled into the darkness, their threats lost in the wind. When the field grew quiet again, Daniel lowered his shovel. Breathing hard, he looked at Lyra. Her chest heaved, her hair clung wet to her face, but her eyes burned with fierce light. "You don't need me to protect you," he said slowly. She shook her head. "No, but I want to fight beside you." His gaze held hers, and for the first time he smiled, small but real. "Then we'll fight together." The days turned into weeks. The crops grew tall, green, and strong. Daniel and Lyra worked side by side from sunrise to sunset. By day, she was his strength in the fields. By night, she was his warmth by the fire. Their bond was no longer built on hunger or desperation, but on choice. The villagers still whispered, but some began to watch differently. They saw the fields thriving. Despite the odds, they saw Daniel standing taller, and the alien girl walking proudly by his side, rumors softened into curiosity, curiosity into uneasy respect. One afternoon, as Daniel loaded grain, a woman from the village approached. She hesitated, then offered a basket of seeds. "For planting," she said quickly before walking away. It was a small gesture, but it meant the wall between them was cracking. That night, as they sat by the fire, Daniel said quietly, "You kept your promise." Lyra tilted her head. "Which one?" He looked at her, his voice steady. Fields by day, warmth by night. Her cheeks flushed, but she smiled, soft and certain. "And I will keep it, always." The firelight flickered across their faces. The house no longer felt lonely. The farm no longer felt empty. In the silence there was trust. In the work there was strength. And in the simple words they had shared, there was something deeper. Family. Outside, the night stretched across the fields, endless and dark. But inside, in the warmth of a small fire, two lives once broken had woven together. By day, she labored with him. By night, she stayed by his side, and in both they found more than survival. They found each other.